In today's video, we're going to be talking about Supabase UI Library. So if you're a developer working with Next.js or React.js and you want pre-built components with Supabase and also your React and Next.js code pre-built for you, this should be a very exciting video. Let's quickly jump right into the video. What we have here is just the documentation for Supabase UI library. So it says it's UI block for Supabase project, a collection of React components built on the Shadcn library that connects your front end to your Supabase backend by a single command, right? And there's pretty much a lot of components available from the team already created, which is amazing. So we'll just be going through the installation process and now. If you're not familiarized with Shadcn, so Shadcn is just a component library, right? Which basically has a lot of like components and the whole idea is just for code distribution, right? And it's open source. So Supabase UI library was created on top of this, right? And for Shadcn mostly works properly with Tailwind CSS, which is very popular, and there's a whole lot of components available on Shadcn. So let's just get started. So we have the documentation here, and we are being shown how to get started with Shadcn. If you're working on a Next.js project, remember I said it's for Next.js and your React project, or you're working on a turn stack application or a React single page application or React router, there's different documentation for you to use. But for we and for this video, we are just going to be going with Next.js, right? So before we do that, let's just take a look at the blocks that we have. So this is basically bringing in the client if you're working with Next.js for Supabase. So if you've worked with Supabase before now, you know you have to create this by hand or from scratch, right? But I think there's already a block available for you to do that, so you won't have to do that by hand. So we have password-based authentication, we have drop zone, we have social auth. I think this is a new one, right? And these are all pre-built components, making it easy to integrate Supabase into your application, and I'll show you that in a minute. So what we just have here is just our VS Code open up, and we have a Next.js project created from scratch. So for this video, like you said, we're going to be making use of Next.js, right, to integrate Supabase UI library into our code base. So first off, let's just quickly spin up our server, npm dev. You could use npm or yarn or any other package manager you have there, but for this video I'm just going to be making use of pnpm, and I think our server should be up at this point on localhost 3000. So we're just making use of Next.js. So Next.js basically is just a React framework for the web. Should be the most popular React framework out there, and I think you check out documentation to read more about what Next.js offer. So let's just quickly jump into localhost 3000 and have a look. Okay, so what we just have here is just a dummy Next.js application, right? When you install a Next.js application. So going back to the documentation of Supabase, let's jump back right into the introductions. Okay, so it says the flexible open source React-based UI component, right? Built on Shadcn, designed to simplify Supabase power projects with pre-built auth storage and real-time features, right? So the components are basically extendable, composable, and basically scaffolding for hard problems. Setting up something like us should be easy. So we've done the work for you. So the whole idea about Supabase UI library is just to make the work easier for you when you're working with Next.js. So this scaffolding problem has actually been like a personal issue for me basically. When you get to like set up authentication on your Next.js application with Supabase, you have to create from scratch. You have to like make sure a lot of things are working, else the authentication might not work as required. But now with Supabase UI library, that's already solved because just with one command, we have access to already pre-built components and code that are just going to make it very seamless for us. So we can just go to the quick start back. So if you're already using a recent version of Shadcn in your existing project, you can skip this process. Okay, so we have a Next.js application. So let's take a look at Next.js. First off, right, remember it's built on Shadcn, meaning you need to have Shadcn installed in your project. So we're just gonna take the command pnpm. Remember, we're using pnpm, right? We're just gonna copy it and use it. So we're just going to install Shadcn first because we need Shadcn before we can make use of the pre-built component available from Supabase UI. So what color are we going to use for the base? We're just going to go with neutral. We're just going to use first, right, to update our the packages that needs to be installed. Okay, so Shadcn has been installed in our project. So if you go to our lib, then utils, created one file, then our package.json has been updated too. So let's look at the next step. So it says we basically need to add a component, but remember when we use of Supabase UI library, so we won't even have to be worried about that for now. So we'll go back to documentation. So we're done installing Shadcn. We are going to quickly just jump right into integrating Supabase directly. Integrating Supabase UI. To make this streamless, let's install the Supabase client libraries. And we're just going to choose Next.js for this installation. Remember, Next.js is what we're using in our application. So taking a look at this, what does this really do? So this brings in the client, Supabase client, the middleware, the server.ts, and these are all files you create manually before now, right? But let's just quickly just copy what we have here. Remember, we're using pnpm and go back to our VS Code and say we just want to install the client. This should pretty much take a minute. So if you look at this before now, we don't really have much files here. We just have the page and the global.cs and then layout. So let's just install the clients, right? Let's use dash force. Okay, so it's done installing. It says you need to add an environmental variable file with the following environmental variables, right, to your project. So we'll get to that in a minute. So going back to documentation again, we say um we're done installing this, so we want to set up authentication in our application, and we are just going to take the password based authentication component, right, or block, and that's basically what we're going to use. So this we basically include pretty much a whole lot of code, and I'll be going through each of the codes to like explain what's really happening. So bringing back VS Code, I think we can clear this. So this looks cleaner for us to the eyes. And I'm taking a look at this now. Installing the client, right? We're able to install the server, install the middleware, install and also the client. So basically, the server, right, is just making use of the Supabase client and making it available to our application to use. So, for example, you want to access Supabase on your server component, right? You can basically make use of this, or you could use the one from the client, and you have the middleware, which is also just setting up Supabase, the communication between Supabase and your application. So this was automatically created for us. So jumping to the next one, pnpm. Let's just do this, and we're gonna say we want to install the password based auth Next.js, right? .json. This shouldn't take much time, but just watch this. At this point, we should have a whole lot of pages in our application. So once this is installed, let's just wait for a bit. Okay, so it's done installing, right? So taking a look at this, we pretty much have a whole lot of components that came in with just that command. So we didn't have to write it by hand. So we have auth page, right, which basically includes all the pages that has to do with confirm, error, forget password, login, sign up success, and update password. So these are all different pages already set to make use of Supabase authentication already. Then for the protected page is just a protected page that only signing users can access. So we're just gonna see that in the browser. I just needed to like explain what's going on there. They're going into the components. We see we have the UI already created. So these are all UI components, right? Or components from Shadcn. They were automatically created for us by the command. Then we have the other components, the blocks, right? We have the forget password form, we have the login form, we have the logout button, sign up form, update password form. We didn't create this by hand. This was all created. And the beauty about this is all hooked up to Supabase, right? So for example, now you see we already have Supabase.auth reset, take the email, and we are resetting the password for this particular user. This is all created and it makes use of the client. Remember, we already created here. Amazing. So showing this in action, let's just jump into the browser. So going back to localhost 3000 and taking a look and see what we have. Okay, amazing. So if you try hitting, there should be an hot login page. Okay, so once we hit this page, you see what we have here. We have a login page, a beautiful login page that was created, and like I said, this is all hooked up to Supabase already. Now we won't be able to log in, right? Because we haven't set up our environmental variable, remember. So if we try logging in, this is obviously not going to work, right? This is obviously not going to work for us because we don't have our environmental variable set up. So let's quickly just jump to Supabase and create a project that we are going to use for this demo. So going to Supabase, we're going to jump to the dashboard. We're going to go to the dashboard, choose an organization, and we could just create a new project. Okay, let's go with this organization. We can create a new project here, and we could call this YouTube Supabase Supabase UI, and we can type in a password here and create a new project. So while this is being set up, we're already in the Supabase dashboard. So while we are here, we just need to get the environmental variables, right? Which basically includes the Supabase URL and the anonymous key, which we need to authenticate to Supabase that the request is coming from the right source. Okay, so let's just quickly get our Supabase URL and the anonymous key. So we jump into project settings and data API. We should have access to the URL and also the anonymous key. So it's also quite mentioning that the some changes might be coming to how we consume environmental variables or how we work with these URLs. So there's a blog post somewhere from the Supabase team, right, speaking about the new API key coming in Q2. I think we could basically look at this reading the announcements. So I think it's basically changing how we consume the API keys, right? It's changing to publishable and secret keys. So I think the namings are just gonna change. So it's worth mentioning that for people watching this video in the future. Let us get our URL. So first we have our URL, and we're just gonna set up our URL for okay, showing you what we're doing here. So we just have the URL, setting up this is the URL, right? Then for the anonymous key, let's get the one for this particular project. So get this one and open up VS Code and we'll paste this in VS Code. So at this point, we should have access to Supabase, right? We should be able to interact with Supabase and also log in new users. Amazing. So let's jump right back into our page and refresh. Okay, so we are here. Remember, we just need to sign up right now, and let's quickly jump into sign up page. Okay, for the sign up, let's just do test 1234, right? Test 1234. But for email, we're just gonna make use of this email, right, to sign up the users. And once we do this, let's take a look at this. We have 123. Let's just copy it, no thanks. So thanks for signing up. Check your email to confirm. So go to our email and quickly confirm this particular email, right? Then we should be able to sign into the application. Now, all this was already created for us. We didn't have to create it. So now think about it like this. You didn't even have to create this from scratch, and you could even design this to your own taste and how you want it to work, right? So because it's very, very extendable, it's Shadcn, right? It's Tailwind CSS, and it's just what anybody can come in and make changes to. So confirm your email address. So we just have this email already sent from Supabase to your inbox, and we've confirmed it, and we're taking back to the application. So now being back in the application, let's go back to our all screen. So at this point, I think we should be able to um login. Remember what we have there was this email. Then our password was test123. So once we log in, let's see what happens. We should be taken to a protected page, right, where we can see our logged in user. Amazing. So we can update password and we say no thanks. Okay, so we have our logged in user already. So the user logged in right now is this email, right? So this is a protected page where only these users can actually access. So just to show you, let's log out and try logging in again. And we're just gonna say test 1 2 3. Okay, before we log in, let's try seeing if we can go to the protected routes. We can't hit the protected routes, obviously, because it's gonna throw us back to login page. And just to show you that in code, right? Let's go to, I think we have our protected page, right? Which should just be server, a React server component, right? RSC. And so what's just happening here is we're getting the user. So if there's no user, data the user, right? Redirect the user back to the login page. That was what's happening there. So all this code was not created by us. We didn't have to write this code at all. And we just had to we just had to install Supabase UI library, and this was made possible for us. Okay, so I think that's just general idea around Supabase UI library, right? So we all created our authentication flow even without writing any piece of code. All we just had to do was to make use of the blocks and the UI components already provided from the Supabase team. Thanks to the Supabase team and thanks to the Supabase UI, right, we can just create our authentication flow, and this saves you a whole lot of time. If you're a Supabase fan or you've gotten to use Supabase before now, you know how many steps you have to take before you can set up your clients, before you can set up authentication in your application and stuff like that with Supabase. But now with this, you can quickly set it up and move on and build amazing features in your application. So for speaking about the Supabase UI library, there are other components you could check out. And what's great is they are adding more components, or they're adding more blocks every day, right? There are more blocks that are being added, and making it easier for you to integrate Supabase into into your Next.js application or your React application. So I think we've come to the end of this particular video, and see you in the next video about Supabase.